Ending a long-term relationship after my boyfriend betrayed my trust? My boyfriend and I had been together for 4.5 years. However, for me, my sexual desire had diminished after the first 6 months of those 4.5 years. There could be various reasons for this. He moved into my house very quickly, largely due to the economic necessities of the country we live in. Shortly after we met, we became two good friends who got along very well. There was an age difference between us. I was a 32-year-old woman, and he was a 23-year-old man. For someone like me who had experienced countless one-night stands and casual flings after my divorce, it seemed like an impossible relationship, but he fell in love with me and I allowed our relationship to develop. We were both working at the university in different departments but on the same floor. During the first 3 years of those 4.5 years I was writing my doctoral thesis, and I was incredibly stressed and depressed. He put up with me during that time. There were days when I couldn't even get out of bed and struggled to work. It was also during the pandemic, so we had no interaction with the outside world. I couldn't show the closeness that was needed during this period. When the pandemic restrictions ended, we started going out a lot, but I still struggled to show intimacy. During this time, he expressed many times that he wanted to get closer, but he also began mentioning that he wanted to be involved with other people. Despite all my efforts in the last months, I couldn't dissuade him from this desire, and I appeared to accept it. However, I constantly warned him about the challenges of an open relationship. We agreed on some rules, such as only engaging with others when visiting parents or traveling to another city, and that any involvement should remain a one-night affair. However, when he went to visit his parents, he didn't call me for 3 days. When I called him, he said he was out and waiting in line for the bathroom. I called again to ask if he could talk to me for 2 minutes, and he said he wanted to discuss things in detail when he got back. I realized something was wrong but didn't press further. The next day, I told him I felt lonely but that I accepted his offer to talk when he returned. He assured me that he would call and that I shouldn't feel lonely, but he didn't call. The next day at 12 p.m., I called and asked why he hadn't called me. He said he was eating and would call me later, but I insisted, saying I only needed 5 minutes and wanted to know why he hadn't called. He admitted he was hooking up with someone, and I asked if it had been for the past 5 days. He said yes. After that, I gathered all his belongings from the house and took them to a friend's place. I sent him a message saying all his stuff was at our friend's house and that he could pick up the larger items later. He asked why I had kicked him out, and I said it was the best decision for both of us. When he returned to the city, he tried to talk to me, but I refused. I was deeply hurt and couldn't see how we could move forward after such a breach of trust. He had promised to abide by the rules we had set together, and I had trusted him to honor our agreement. However, his actions during those 5 days showed me that he prioritized his own desires over the boundaries we had established. I felt betrayed not only because he had been with someone else but also because he hadn't communicated with me during that time, leaving me to feel isolated and confused. Over the following weeks, he reached out multiple times, apologizing and asking for another chance. He claimed he had made a mistake and that he still loved me. While I appreciated his willingness to take responsibility for his actions, I couldn't ignore the underlying issues in our relationship. The lack of intimacy, the communication breakdowns, and the fundamental differences in what we wanted from our partnership had become too significant to overlook. I realized that staying together would only prolong the pain for both of us. I began to reflect on the relationship as a whole. Despite the good times we had shared, I couldn't deny that we had grown apart in many ways. Our connection had shifted from a romantic relationship to something more akin to a friendship. While I cared deeply for him, I knew that continuing in this way would not be fair to either of us. I wanted him to have the opportunity to find someone who could meet his emotional and physical needs, and I wanted the same for myself. Ending the relationship was one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make, but I knew it was the right one. I'm writing this so calmly now, but I was in shock at the time. That evening, I blocked his number and went to another city. 4 days later, he called and came to me saying he didn't want to lose me. But I was so hurt that I didn't respond. During those days, I walked around that city, reaching incredible step counts daily, listening to meditation podcasts. 2 days after I returned, I told him it wasn't working anymore. He couldn't say anything. He seemed okay at first, but 2 weeks later he started sending accusatory messages saying, "How could you throw me out of the house?" I reminded him that I had paid for half the car we bought together and given him all the extra money I had. I asked him what more he wanted from me. He told me I had no right to kick him out and that he didn't deserve it. Later, he claimed his heart rate had increased and he had been hospitalized, asking me to come. His mother also called, asking me to go, but I refused. I know he has panic attacks. Afterward, he married someone else immediately, and I think he's happy now. As for me, I don't constantly think about the breakup itself, but I can't stop wondering if I was wrong to throw him out of the house. The conditions in our country are tough. Starting a new household and being without belongings is quite difficult. Even though a lot of time has passed, I still feel guilty. I'm now in a happy new relationship. I wonder if I've learned what I needed to from my previous relationship. After the breakup, I focused on rebuilding my sense of self and prioritizing my own happiness. I leaned on friends and family for support, and I sought therapy to help process my emotions and gain clarity about what I wanted in future relationships. While it was painful to let go of someone I had shared so much of my life with, I ultimately felt a sense of relief and liberation. I learned the importance of setting boundaries, communicating openly, and recognizing when it's time to walk away from a situation that no longer serves you. Although the ending was difficult, it marked the beginning of a new chapter in my life, one where I could focus on my own growth and well-being. Let's read recent comment was, "The quickness that he moved in gave me homosexual vibes. In other words, he was using you for his convenience. The desire to open the relationship and his being upset at losing his housing and not you pretty much spells out that he was using you. His quickness to marry suggests that someone was already in the picture. I think your quickness to act was your subconscious realizing that he wasn't being honest about his true feelings." Thank you for listening the story to the end. If you enjoy our videos, so don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Have a good day, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do it and hit the notification bell icon to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.